Hi there guys, in this video we're going to be looking at using a Seedbox with Sonarr, Radarr and your home media server. Sounds interesting? Let's get started. So, over the last few months I've been receiving a lot of questions from people asking about how you set up a Seedbox and then configure it to work with your home server, especially with programs such as Sonarr and Radarr. But before we start, let's talk about what exactly a Seedbox is. Because if you haven't heard of one before, then you'd be forgiven if you thought it was something to do with gardening. But what it actually is, it's a private online server that's used for the uploading and downloading of torrent files. And if you're familiar with torrents, then you know you get seeders and leechers, hence the name Seedbox. So why would you want to use a Seedbox if you can just download torrents directly to your computer or server at home? Well, there's a few really good reasons why you may want to use a Seedbox. The most obvious one is being privacy. And because a Seedbox is an online private server, it has its own IP address. So when you download a torrent file, it's downloaded through the IP address of that server and not through the IP address of your home connection. So your ISP has no idea that you're downloading a torrent at all. But one of the best reasons for using a Seedbox is Seedboxes are on a very high bandwidth connection, which is much faster than our home connections are. So we can download and upload torrents at really good speeds. And this is great for private trackers where they want you to maintain a good ratio. Within just a few weeks of using a Seedbox, your ratio will be really good. And another good reason for using a Seedbox is you're not using your own connection for uploading. Normally, if you do torrenting on your own computer, you download the torrent and then you'll leave it seeding for a while it's uploading the file to other users. So the upload portion of your home internet connection is constantly being used. Now, normally home connections don't have a great upload speed anyway. And you don't want it being clogged up by torrents uploading, especially if you're using an MB or Plex server and streaming your media to friends and family, because they'll only be calling you on the phone complaining that things are buffering and saying what's wrong with the server. So by doing the torrenting on a Seedbox, you're leaving your bandwidth on your home connection free to do what you want to be able to do. And also the Seedbox is on 24/7, so it's always able to upload and download files whenever you want. Now you may be wondering what happens when the Seedbox has actually got the files downloaded for you. How do you get them to your computer? Well, we use some open source software called Syncthing, and we use this software to securely synchronize the completed folder on the Seedbox with a folder of our choice on our computer or server at home. So basically, as soon as the torrent's finished downloading on the Seedbox, it will be transferred straight away across to your server at home. We can even set the Seedbox to unpack any torrent files downloaded itself, and for Syncthing to only send across the unpacked files to you at home. So what I'm going to be going through in this video is setting up our uTorrent on a Seedbox, then having Sonarr and Radarr locally on my Unraid server at home, and have them use our uTorrent to do all of the downloading. Syncthing will then send those files to my server, and then Sonarr and Radarr will see them, process them and move them ready for Plex or MB. Okay, so let's start and get this set up. Obviously for this project we're going to need to sign up for a Seedbox, and there are various providers out there that you can use. The provider that I use is Ultra Seedbox. I've been using them for a few months now and I found their service really good. So I've put a link to them in the description of this video, and I'd really appreciate if you decide you want to use them to use that link, as it won't cost you any more, but it will help the channel. They've got a good selection of plans with different size hard disks. The one I use myself is the Jaguar Plex. Now I don't use the included Plex part, I just like this because it's got 2 TB of space and 3 to 4 CPUs. But for this video I want to set it up from scratch, so I'm just going to sign up for the cheapest one they got here just to go through the setup process again. So I'm just going to pop a username and password in here and then click on to continue. So onto the checkout page, you don't have to use your real first and last name. Then the only other thing we actually have to fill in is an email address. Now of course you can use your real email address here, but for those of us who like to be super private and we don't want the Seedbox company to know our real email address, then you can sign up with a temporary email address and I'm going to sign up for a temporary email address now with Gorilla Mail, and there's a link to them in the description as well. And my temporary email address is going to be spaceinvadermail@sharklasers.com. So with that set up, I'll go across now and pop that into the checkout page. I'm not going to fill in any address, and for how did I find out about them, I'm just going to put other, and then I'm going to create an account password which I'm going to pop in here. So you don't really have to put in any personal details at all if you don't want to, and for payment you can choose either PayPal, Bitcoin or something called Perfect Money, I'm not sure what that is. Then click on complete order. If you chose PayPal, you just click the PayPal icon there. I'm going to be even more private and I'm going to pay with Bitcoin myself. And it goes without saying, obviously to pay with Bitcoin you'd need a Bitcoin account. If you don't have one, you just pay with PayPal. Okay, so once you've signed up, you're going to have to go back across to your emails and activate the account. So then just click on the link in the email and then log in with the email address and password that you signed up with. Don't worry if you see here it says service is 0. If you click onto that you can see it's pending and it will be shortly set up. After a few minutes you'll be able to log into your Seedbox and it should look something like this. So then just click onto the connect button here. And here you'll see some basic things about your Seedbox, such as the disk size and how much remaining space you've got. Depending on what package you've signed up for, this will all vary. And quickly let's just have a look at access details. These are the various ways that you can actually connect to the Seedbox. And if we click onto applications, this shows the things that we've actually got installed on the Seedbox. At the moment obviously there's nothing here. So to install something, let's click onto installers. And here you'll see a list of everything you can install on the Seedbox. And to install something, it's really easy. It's as simple as just clicking on the install button. It's just one click. So the first thing to install is ruTorrent, and we're going to install the latest version. That will just take a moment to be installed. Okay, there, it's installed now. So the next thing we need to install is ruTorrent. Now this is actually a web UI for ruTorrent. So as we're going to be accessing it over the web, we need to put in a username and password and then just click on to install. Okay, so with that installed, let's go ahead and install the last application that we need. Let's install Syncthing. And Syncthing, that needs us to create a password as well, so just pop in that twice and click on to install. And now with those 3 applications installed, let's go across and click onto applications. And we can see them listed here. So let's log into ruTorrent. So for that, let's click onto show info, and here we can see the connection details, the usernames listed here. If you've forgotten the password, just click on the I button. So let's click on to connect, then pop in the username and password and click on sign in. And that brings us to ruTorrent's web UI. We'll come back to ruTorrent later where we'll change some settings, but for now let's just have a look at Syncthing and check that's working. Again, click on show info and then connect. Don't worry when your web browser says that the connection's not private, that's normal, just continue on. Again here we just pop in our username and password and click sign in. Now the first time we go to the web UI for Syncthing, the page doesn't look quite right. That's because we need to restart the application. So to do that, let's go back to our control panel, click onto actions and then restart. And we can see the application's restarted. So now we can log back into the web UI and everything looks fine. So that's all of our applications now set up. So now let's go back across to ruTorrent and make some configuration changes there. So we want to go and click on the cog at the top here, and then on the left hand side go down to where it says Auto Tools, and we need to enable the Auto Label feature here and also the Auto Move feature. Now for the path to finish downloads, click on the icon here and that will show your current directory. So at the end we just want to type completed. And for operation type we want to leave that on move. And we want to select here the add torrents label to path. Now the next setting we want to do is the unpack setting here. So click onto that. And we want to enable auto unpacking of torrents. Now if we leave it like this it will just unpack every torrent that downloads. But I don't think it's a good idea to have it unpack every single torrent. Basically, if you had like a download of say a whole load of emulator ROMs, you wouldn't want them to be automatically unzipped. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in here / open brackets and then series, pipe or vertical bar, movies, close brackets / I. Now what this will do, for any torrents that have the label of either series or movies, it will automatically unpack these torrents. And these are the labels that I use in my Sonarr and Radarr containers. If yours were different, you'd just change them here. And if you wanted to auto unpack any other labels, you just put them inside the brackets as well, separated by a pipe. Underneath here we want to leave that blank so the torrents just extract inside the current directory that they're in, and that's pretty much everything we need to do for our uTorrent settings, so then just click onto OK at the bottom. So now before we move on, let's just quickly test downloading a torrent. I'm going to download the torrent of Ubuntu Mate. Now as this torrent doesn't have any label assigned to it, it should just download straight into the completed folder. And we can check that's the case by clicking onto the torrent name, and then clicking onto File Manager, Files, and then we can see inside the completed folder here, there's our torrent of Ubuntu Mate. So what we need to do now is to use Syncthing to sync the completed folder with our Unraid server at home. So let's quickly go back to our uTorrent settings, and then go to Auto Tools, and then let's copy the direct path to our completed folder. And just to make it easier so I don't forget what this is, I'm going to open a text file and just paste it in here for safekeeping. Right, so now let's set up Syncthing. So let's go to its web UI and then click on the button to add folder. So we need to give the folder a name, so I'm going to call it completed. And you can see at the bottom under folder path here, it's already made a folder for it to go, but this isn't correct, so this is where we need to paste what we copied from our uTorrent. And so Syncthing will then synchronize everything in the completed folder where our torrents go. So next I'm going to switch over to the Advanced tab here and change the folder type to Send Only. So then it's going to be a one-way sync and things can't be deleted from the folder on the Seedbox from my home server at home. And it's important to do this so our torrents continue seeding on the Seedbox and they don't get deleted. Now here I'm just setting the pull order, you can set it to whatever you like. I'm going to set mine to newest first, and now I'm going to click on to save. We can see here now that the folder's being scanned, but at the moment obviously it's unshared. If we go back and look in the settings and click onto sharing, we don't have any other devices to share with. So now what I'm going to do is go across to my Unraid server and set up Syncthing there. Now if we look at my download share here, you can see I've got various subfolders for the different type of downloads that I've got. So now I'm going to go across to my download share and I'm going to make a new folder for the completed Seedbox downloads. And I'm going to name the folder torrents_seedbox. So now with the destination folder completed, let's go onto the Apps tab and do a search for Syncthing. And the container I'm going to use is the Linux server one here. So click onto the download icon, then scroll down the page a bit, then you need to fill in for the container path /sync. You want to map that across to your user share, so that'll be /mnt/user. So that's the template set up, so just click on apply to pull down the container and then done. So then head across to the Docker tab and then let's go to Syncthing's web UI. Then at the top here click onto actions and then settings. Then we want to set a device name. I'm going to call mine Unraid server and then click on to save, and we can see here now it's named. So now I'm going back across to the web UI of Syncthing on the Seedbox and I'm going to do the same here, go to settings and I'm going to give this a name and obviously I'm going to call it Seedbox and click save. So now we can easily see which Syncthing is which because they're named. So on Syncthing on the Seedbox, I'm now going to click Add Remote Device, and in this box here we put in the device ID of another Syncthing instance. So back on Syncthing on my Unraid server, I'm going to go to Actions and then Show ID, and copy Unraid Syncthing's ID here, then go back to the Seedbox Syncthing and paste the ID in here. And the device name, I'm going to call it Unraid server, and then click on to save. And now we can see on remote devices at the bottom there, it says Unraid server and it's unused because on the Unraid server Syncthing, I have to accept this connection now. So now let's go across to the Unraid Syncthing's web UI and accept the connection. It can take a minute or two to appear here. Okay, it's here now. So once you see that, then click on Add Device. And you can see the device name's already filled in, so I just need to click on to save. And so now the two Syncthings are linked together. So although the Seedbox and my Unraid server are linked together, there's no folders shared yet. So across on the Seedbox, I'm going to add the completed folder here that we set up earlier. I'm going to click onto edit and then go to sharing, and now we can see a tick box here for Unraid server. So I'm going to check that and then click save. Now the final thing we have to do is go back across to the Unraid Syncthing and then accept the share. And it says here that Seedbox wants to add the share completed, and so we just click onto add, and now we just need to add the folder path. This is where the data is going to go from the Seedbox onto the Unraid server, and the default path that's been put in here, again, that isn't correct, so let's delete it out. And the map path that was set up was /sync, so if we start typing that in here, then click onto here where it's auto completing, and then we can browse through the various shares of the Unraid server here. So I'm going to go to downloads and then torrent Seedbox. That's the folder I set up earlier. So now I'm going to go on to advanced, and this time I'm going to set this to receive only. And again, the file pull order, you don't need to set this, but I'm just setting mine to newest first again. And click on to save. So now that I've accepted the folder on my Unraid server, it's pulling over the Ubuntu Mate image that we downloaded on the Seedbox. Okay, so now it's finished. Clicking here will show us statistics about what's happened. We can see here the latest change, obviously that's the Ubuntu Mate image. There's other things we can see here, such as the file size on both ends of the sync. It's 1.91 gigs. So let's minimize this, and now let's go across to the share on the server and just have a look there. So in my torrent Seedbox, here I've got the Ubuntu Mate image. Okay, so now we've got basic syncing between the ruTorrent on the Seedbox and a folder on the Unraid server. So now the next thing we want to do is to add the remote ruTorrent onto Sonarr and Radarr on the Unraid server. So let's go across to the Unraid web UI and go to the Docker tab. And first let's go down to Sonarr, and let's go to the web UI, and then click onto settings, then download client, then click on plus to add a new client, then go down to ruTorrent, then just give the client a name. I'm going to call mine Seedbox. Then the next thing we need to fill in is the host, and to find out what the host is we have to go to the service control panel for our Seedbox. Then under ruTorrent click on show info, and we can get all of the info we need out of these port details here. And you want to copy this part here, which is your host. Make sure you don't copy in the HTTPS, as that isn't necessary. So let's go back across the Sonarr and just paste in the host here. Now underneath for the port value we want to change that to 443. Then toggle the use SSL switch and put it onto yes. Now for the URL path we need to delete out this here, and then go back across to the service control panel. Now what we need to do is copy this part here after the /. Now make sure you don't forget the tilde sign here, that's important. Then after having copied that, let's go back across the Sonarr and then paste it into the URL path here. So next we need to put in the username and password, and if you can't remember it, again it's in the service control panel there. So I'm going to put mine in here. My username is Space Invader, then underneath I'm going to pop in my password. Then underneath here where it says category, I'm going to delete out the default, because what we put here is the label that's passed through to ruTorrent, and I was using the label series for my auto unpacking. Okay, so now we can click on test and see if we've got a connection. Okay, that's good, it says the connection succeeded. But before we leave this page and save, let's just grab the host name again, because we're going to need that next. So let's copy it. Now we can click on to save. So now the download client's all set up, but to get everything working correctly, we're going to have to do some mapping in Sonarr. So to do that at the top here, we need to toggle that onto advanced view, and then scroll down to the bottom, and here we can see remote path mappings. So click onto plus, and where it says host, paste in what we just copied out from the client a moment ago. Now if you remember earlier, when I was configuring our ruTorrent, I copied and pasted the location of the completed file and put it in a text file so I'd remember it later. Well, we need that information now. So now copy the location of the completed folder on the Seedbox ruTorrent and paste it in here where it says remote path. So now for the local path we need to select where Syncthing has been putting our sync files. So click on the browse file here, and then I'm going to go across to data, and then torrent Seedbox. This is the folder that I set up earlier in my download share. Now obviously to be able to see this location, it must be mapped in the Docker template. This is my Sonarr mappings here. /data is mapped across to the download share, and inside the download share, that's where my folder torrents_seedbox resides. So what this mapping does is to tell Sonarr where the ruTorrent's completed downloads are, so it can process them and move them across to MB or Plex. Okay, so now with the mappings added, let's click on to save. And so that's Sonarr now all set up so it can use the Seedbox. Of course, setting up the client in Radarr is exactly the same, so I'm not going to go through it in any detail at all. So everything's the same, just make sure for your category that you put in the same that you're using for ruTorrent, and I'm using movies. And so with Radarr, as we did with Sonarr, we just do the same mapping process as we did earlier. Okay, to finish off, we're going to go back to Syncthing on the Seedbox, and we're going to look at Selective Syncing. Now when we configured ruTorrent, we set it to automatically unpack anything with the label of series or movies. So it makes sense for those labels that we only download the extracted files. So to do that, click onto your folder. As you can see here, I've now downloaded some extra things into the completed folder, and you can see it stands at 11 gigs. So now we're going to make some changes to this folder, so let's click on to edit, and then we need to go on to ignore patterns. So here we can enter patterns to be ignored. So for series, I'm going to put /series, and then /, then **r**. Then I'm going to do exactly the same but for movies, so /movies, and double asterisk again, .r**. So what this is doing is in the subfolders series and movies, Syncthing is ignoring all file extensions of .r something, so therefore avoiding syncing any RAR files that have been put into the folders of the label series and movies. Everything else in the completed folder that doesn't have a label of series or movies will just be synced in the normal fashion. So once you put in your patterns, just click on to save. And now if we go back and look at the file size of what's going to be synced, we can see it's been reduced now to 8.7 gigs, because now with that filter it's ignoring all the RAR files. So with that done, that's everything set up. So now you'll be able to use a Seedbox with Sonarr and Radarr, have the Seedbox download everything so you get really good ratios with private trackers, then have any movies and TV shows that need extracting, have that done on the Seedbox, then the resulting files quickly synced across to your Unraid server for Sonarr and Radarr to process. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed the video and you find it useful. If you did, then please hit up that like button, and if you know anyone else that might be interested, then please share the video with them too. And I'd just like to take a moment to express my thanks to all of my patrons and supporters out there. It's you guys that make these videos all possible. Well guys, it's time for me to go now, so whatever you're up to for the rest of the day, I hope it's good, and I'll catch you in the next video.